Today I'll be interviewing my grandpa, Charles Costa. He grew up in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, and played baseball in the 1950s and 1960s. So, what were some of the earliest memories you have of the game of baseball?
The earliest memory I had was taking a train from Dartmouth to Fenway Park with my dad. We didn't have a car, so we took a train and went to see the Yankees play because Yankees was my dad's team, and so he wanted to introduce me to baseball. And my memory though is I got a souvenir, and the souvenir was a little miniature bat, and that bat I still have. I think I gave it to my grandson to keep and treasure for the rest of his life.
So, how did you originally get involved in the game of baseball? Was it with your dad, or was it through some friends?
No, my dad. My dad was a big Yankee fan, and he loved baseball, and so do I. And he introduced me to baseball, and I was a Yankee fan for a long time, even though we lived next to Fenway. And it wasn't until later on that I became a Red Sox fan. But one of my early memories actually is watching him. One day we were watching the World Series against Brooklyn, and Don Larson pitched a perfect game. And I remember my dad just jumping all over the room and yelling and screaming. And first thing he did was call one of my uncles, one of the family relatives, and because he was a Dodger fan, and he was, just ecstatic. It was great. It was a great moment. Black and white TV. It was unbelievable.
So, many of the kids today, when they play baseball, they play the travel baseball. They travel around the country and play different teams. What were the youth leagues like growing up, and how were the games? What were they like growing up?
When I started out playing organized ball, it was Little League, and they were just local teams. Everybody got to play. It was one of those, everybody got a chance to play. All the kids with no skills would get put out into right field where they couldn't do any damage. And they'd get to play 2 innings and then get pulled out, and somebody else would get pulled in. And then the next league up was Pony League, and I played that for a while. After that, I played a little semi-pro, local semi-pro baseball.
And when you played, what position were you in?
First base. Okay. That was another skill set that you put the guy who had no fielding skills on first base. If he could hit, you put him on first base.
Okay. Right. And you were talking about how you used to be a Yankee fan and then you became a Boston fan. Who were some of those baseball heroes you had when you were growing up, and why?
Well, interesting enough. When I was growing up, it was mostly Yankee heroes. And one of my big regrets in life, I guess it's not a big thing, but was I paid no attention to Ted Williams. He was in my backyard, and he was one of the greatest players that ever played the game. And I never paid attention to him. I always kind of wondered why that was. And I remember why it was, actually, because there was a Boston paper called the Boston Advertiser, and it was a rag. But it was a good rag because it had great sports columnists. And one of them, a guy named Gilhooly, and he was a Ted Williams hater. So I used to buy this thing every day. I'd go down as a kid. I'd go down and buy it for a nickel or whatever it was and read it, all the sports. And, hockey, basketball, baseball. And this guy was a Ted Williams hater. So I got to not hate Ted Williams, but never appreciated him. And here I had a chance to watch, one of the greats. And, it's too bad.
Did any of those players, I know you said you weren't a fan of Ted Williams, but did they influence the way you played baseball? Did they influence your game, kind of how you approached the game, anything like that?
My approach to the game was to not drop the ball. Okay. And not look too stupid when I get up there and swung at a ball that was outside the strike zone. Okay.
And when you went to go watch those teams, I know you talked about how your dad called your uncle and you had that moment. What were some other your favorite memories, maybe at the game, any of the games you attended, or at either at Fenway or Yankee Stadium?
Well, some of the biggest moments were, a couple of them were at games, but most of the big moments were watching it on TV because that's what we did.
Mhm.
Okay, radio. Okay, radio was big. You know, and I'd listen to the New York Yankee games and listen to Mel Allen, or Red Sox games, Kurt Gowdy, big time sportscasters back in then. But one of the things I remember, one of the games I remember, was Bucky Dent hitting a home run for the Yankees in the bottom of the ninth, I think it was, to beat the Red Sox at Fenway. And then that sixth game of the St. Louis Boston World Series, where you see the catcher from the Red Sox trying to, you know, coach the ball inside the foul line. That was an exciting moment. That was an exciting moment.
And what game was that? How did that game end? Do you remember?
Well, the Red Sox won the sixth game,
Mhm.
okay, but they lost the seventh.
Okay.
Okay, that was part of their winning, you know, their losing streak. Okay. One of the things about liking the Red Sox, by that time I was a Red Sox fan, is, you know, that whole business about winning, and then you get to the final game and something happens, okay?
And what made you change from being a Yankees fan to a Red Sox fan? Because that's a big change. I mean, those teams are considered rivals, and I mean that is a big change. So
It's a major change. I think I wanted my own identity. I was identifying with my dad for a long time, and I loved Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra, and I really do like the Yankees. But then the Yankees changed, and so I kind of gravitated back to the Red Sox.
And was the Yankees change? Was it through players or was it
Players, mostly
change?
players, yeah, mostly players.
And when you played, what was your favorite game or moment that you have when you were playing baseball? It could be, I mean, any time when you're in Little League or when you said you played semi-pro.
My first home run.
First home run? Take
Yeah.
me back to that moment. Like,
Taking me back to that moment.
how was it?
Huh?
What happened? What was?
Well, I just was up there at bat, and you know, I hit that ball, and I just kind of watched it, and it kept going, and it was great. Yeah, it was a fun moment. Fun moment. Home runs are fantastic.
And while you played, who were some of the mentors you had?
Well, my dad, we used to play catch all the time, and he was a pretty good ball player, and that's a great moment always to have, you know, play catch with your dad. That's great. If you ever watch Field of Dreams, you know, the best baseball movie ever, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. And my coaches were, you know, helpful, and, you know, taught me what they could. But it was just local baseball, and you learned by playing sandlot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you'd get your bat and your ball, and you'd go down, and there were local fields, or even, you know, lots, you know, in the neighborhood that were empty, and you'd start a baseball game, tape your baseball up, because, you know, the baseballs were expensive, and when the covers came off, you taped them up with black tape and kept playing.
And recently, there's been a push to modernize the game, make baseball fun again. How has the game evolved since you played, and what is your opinion on some of those recent changes?
I don't have any big problem with some of the changes. The designated hitter is, I'm kind of neutral on it. I could deal with it or deal without it. Okay, it hasn't made a big difference in the game that much. I mean, the American League still wins their fair share of the World Series, and so does the National League. So it's not a determining factor. I think the game in general is as good as it's ever been. I think the rules are still, you know, good rules in general. Changing the game, though, should be slow and easy. In other words, it shouldn't be just changed to make it more attractive. I'm not sure what that means. I go to basketball games, and, you know, all I see is flashing lights and loud music and cameras all over the place and people up on the teletrons or whatever it is. And that doesn't make the game any better.
So that's not something you would want to have in
I'm not particularly excited about, you know, that kind of change.
Mhm.
Okay, I think the game survives because it is traditional.
Mhm.
It does have a link to the past and a continuity to it.
Okay.
Goes
And-
from generation to generation.
And what were some of the important lessons that you learned through either playing or just experiencing the game of baseball?
Teamwork. Baseball's a team. Okay, it's one of the true team sports. Everybody on the team has to learn how to not pitch, but catch a ball, throw a ball, bat, and field. Except for the pitcher, and if he's really good, he doesn't have to do anything, right? Just pitch. But it's a true team sport, and anybody can play. You don't have to be 300 pounds. You don't have to be 7 foot tall. It's an equal opportunity sport.
And how do you feel with the use of steroids in the game? Is that, in your opinion, has that either helped the game evolve, or is that something that you look down upon, or how do you feel maybe with Barry Bonds recently getting a decent amount of Hall of Fame votes? How do you feel about that, knowing that he did use steroids and his performance was based on his use of steroids?
Right. Initially, people like McGuire were using steroids, but there was no anti-steroid campaign. Okay, so I'll give him kind of a semi-pass, kind of like say, okay, he did it, but it wasn't banned. But if you took them after they were banned, as far as I'm concerned, you're out of baseball.
And during our class, we've studied some old greats such as Sandy Koufax or Roger Clemente. Did you ever get a chance to see those players play or hear it on the radio? And what was that? If you did, what was that experience like?
Most of the time it was on the radio or television. Okay, there wasn't as many games televised, across the country. You didn't get to see the Cubs play. You didn't get to see, the Dodgers or anything. We got to see the Red Sox, and that was about it. But I did get a chance to see some of the big players. I saw Joe DiMaggio and Mickey Mantle and all those great Yankee players, and of course Ted Williams and some of the Red Sox. I did go to the World Series and saw Gibson play, and those are treats because those guys were giants.
Yeah. All right. Finally, what is some advice you would give to a young kid who loves the game of baseball and wants to play?
Play, but have fun. Okay, because don't burn yourself out. If you play cross sports, okay, play baseball, but then play a little something else. Don't get yourself so tied up in the game that you learn not to hate it. And that goes for any sport.
Right. Thank you for your time.